Automotive security in the automotive industry is quite a young field. The first research paper, like really doing security research in automotive industry, is from 2010. It's not working. Well, so I will start by going through like where it started up to today, what's happened, research papers, the articles, the hacks that has been done, and then I will go through the the first hack. Then I will go through the architecture of a modern car with the CAN bus and all the cool stuff they have there. So this is one of the first articles I could find about cars being sort of hacked. So there was a guy who accessed a portal for ODB dongles. So you have the ODB port in your car. It's a small port. I will talk more about it later, where you can attach things that will be attached to the car's network. And so the dealership did this to all the cars they sold. And he managed to get into the portal and access the cars. And because the dongle is in the car network, he couldn't do basically anything with the car. So he, for example, disabled it. And the dealership used this to disable cars that the owners didn't pay for, basically. Here's the first paper in 2010. So what they did, through the ODB port, they managed to inject messages on the CAN bus to hack ECUs. The ECUs are computers. You have a lot of them, and by injecting certain messages, they could control these computers. And it's basically the first paper. And it was criticized because you need to physically attach a cable to the car. And then someone have to break into your car and all that. But they later on, let's see here, they showed another, some other research showed another, where they did remote by let's see, it's the tire pressure, it's the tire pressure monitoring. So you have a sensor in the tire, and you have wireless to ECU in the car, and they managed to tap in on that connection, and could spoof and read sensor data. They could identify cars. And here we have these researchers showing the same attacks but remote. So they got code execution through the MP3 parsing in the radio, the Bluetooth stack, and the telematics unit. Telematics unit is the thing you have on your right, the whole thing here. So they show that this attack could be done remote. Well, sort of remote. You still have to be somewhere around the car. And then 2011. This is also when attaching stuff to the car through the ODB port. So if you attach something that, for example, like the first thing we had here, something like that, to your car, for example, you will control it. Some researchers showed how to, with a text message, control your car. And the same thing if you attacked another one, some other hacker showed that he could control it through a script he used Siri to control. In 2012, they stole BMW cars by connecting this device to the ODB port and reprogram a key to start the car. So what they did, they basically break into the car or smash some parts so they can access the CAN bus. They connect this to the CAN bus, and through that they could reprogram the key to work with that car. And here we have, these are two researchers that did the attack that I will talk about later. The GPAC, the first did with Ford and Toyota. It was non-remote, as you can see here. It's sitting in the car. And they're using like automatic parallel ECUs and lane keep assist to steer the car. And they have full control of the car. And this was a Wired article where they sat that reporter behind the wheel and controlled the car. And Toyota's response to this is that, well, it's a non-remote attack. We think our cars are secure to remote attacks, basically. And they will later show, of course, that it's possible to do remote as well. So one thing they also did was disable the brakes. By just sending messages on the CAN bus, they disabled the brakes and ran out to a field. More aftermarket things you connect to the CAN bus hacked. These are used by different companies, for example, Uber, to track cars. They also, if you rent a car, they could have one of these in them. And there's research showing that they are usually not that secure, as a lot of things that's Internet of Things. Also, students, they hack a Tesla Model S in a competition in China. So it's 2014, and so the field hasn't gone that far in securing cars. It's still quite easy. And here, 2015, we come to the very interesting Jeep Cherokee hack that we'll talk more about later after I talk about how the architecture in car works and why this is so easy to do. Or easy. They had complete over the internet control of the vehicle. They can be anywhere in the world and control the vehicle. And they had some limitations in this hack, and they were criticized by FCA. FCA is Fiat Chrysler, the one that owns Jeep, that they could only control steering when going slow speeds and reverse due to limitations in the ECUs. But more on this later. And of course, they later on released another paper where they removed all those limitations. And this is very interesting. They have a report of state trooper vehicles, and this is older vehicles. So they had, they needed physical access to the car, modified it, adding some things on the CAN bus, and they could actually disable state trooper vehicles when, for example, being chased. And here's another, where another aftermarket add-on is hacked. So the message here is basically do not attach them to your car, because they're obviously not that good. This one is also very interesting. So this is a device that's used in a lot of industrial vehicles to track them, to monitor them. For example, how everything, the amount of fuel in the tank, the tire pressure, everything. And these are open also to the internet because they want to have that in a nice portal. There's a researcher whose name is there who found that these are publicly available internet. So he used Shodan to scan for these, and he found 733 open. That is, and then he had complete control over these vehicles. And this is 2016. And now they have moved also to other stuff, So they moved to trucks, and they are not much more secure. And the CAN bus is not only used in vehicles, it's used in cycling, industrial applications, and probably a lot more. Because it's a cheap and well-proved communication bus. And the ECUs are very cheap as well. This is where the G-Packers, they improved the hack, so they could fully control. They didn't have the limitations where they used the park assist, where you go by a spot and the car bings and you press a button and you just control the speed and the car will park itself. They use that, but that only works in low speeds and in reverse, due to another ECU that says do not work now because you're in high speed. So they disable that ECU, and now it works on all speeds. And FCA, of course, said that, now they said that, okay, this is, because they didn't do that remote because they already had showed that. So they did it while connected to the CAN bus, and they criticized that. Yep. And hackers are not the only problem. You have owners maybe want to modify the firmware of some ECU to get more power of the car. They want to do whatever they can. They want to change firmware to whatever. And you have the owner of the car and the driver of the car might not trust each other. If you, for example, renting, they add some automatic ECU to track the car. Authorities might require functionality. You have devices you can connect to the car that will give that if those devices prove you drive safely, you will have a lower premium on your insurance. Are those secure? Third-party repair shops want to access the car maybe, and third-party developers, of course. Okay, so this is basically a modern car. So you have ECUs. Each ECU is basically a small microcontroller, a small computer. So you have, in a modern car, somewhere between 100 and 150 of these. They're hopefully not, but in this case, they're on the same CAN bus. And you have some kind of CAN controller. You have the head unit. The head unit is what you see, the infotainment cluster, both on the side where the radio buttons and stuff, and in front of you. And there you have all the interesting stuff, like vehicle to X communication, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to whatever. You have 2G, 3G, Bluetooth, DVD, USB, Wi-Fi, the key fob, GPS. That's usually connected in the head unit because that's where it's easiest to put. And this is usually a lot of code here because this is usually a Linux system of some kind. These are starting to get a lot of code here as well, because you have more advanced functionality like park assist, you have lane keeping assist, you have all these interesting issues with a lot of code and functionality. So it's hard to keep all this bug-free. And then you have the nice ODB port. That's usually directly connected to the CAN bus. And that's a connector that you can plug in somewhere in the car, usually under the wheels, under the steering wheel somewhere. Yes. Yeah, here have you the ODB connector here and connect it to the laptop, and you can see all traffic on the CAN bus. You can send traffic to the CAN bus. That's what it looks like. So you have a couple of different standards. You have ODB2, mandatory in the US, and EOBD in the EU. And it's used, for example, to read out diagnostic trouble codes and CAN recordings. For example, if you have a crash or something goes some error, you get a trouble code and a recording that's usually 5 seconds of CAN data before and 30 after, or 25 seconds after. So you can read out there and replay and see exactly what's happened on the CAN bus. So you can see all the traffic here, what all these talked about and what they did. And that's good to troubleshoot what happened in a crash. This port is also used to hack cars, of course. the CAN bus. It's a protocol released in '86. This is what a CAN message looks like. It's basically the main communication bus in cars today. There's starting to be some Ethernet, but it's mainly driven by huge data loads and not security. We will see that later. So let's go in and see these messages, because that's quite interesting. But we will simplify it a bit. So we will talk about the identifier and the data. So identifier and data here. We can ignore the rest. So CAN message is basically 11 bits of identifier and 0 to 8 bytes of data. That's all. So the identifier says what kind of message this is. For example, engine RPM, or any kind of message. And then, depending on the message, you will have different amount of data divided into signals and different signals per message. And the identifier is also used as priority. Lower identifier is higher priority. And everyone on the bus will see all messages, so you have to know which messages are for you. And as you see here, there are no sender or receiver. It's just this message out on the bus. And everyone can read it. No one knows where it came from. And yeah. So let's see what happens when two issues are trying to send a message, or two messages, on the CAN bus. So the CAN bus works like a wired AND gate, basically. So they start by sending 0, 0. They read, okay, it's still 0. We continue. They send 1, 1. Read, I sent 1, I read 1. Okay, that's good. And 0, 0. And here, interesting. This one sends 1, this one sends 0, and it's a AND gate, so it will be 0. This one sees I sent 0, but I sent 1, but I read 0. So it backs off, lets the other one send. So that's how they send. Can anyone think of any attack you can do here? If I only write zeros, will anyone be able to send anything? So that's how that works. So this is hopefully not how modern cars looks like, where everything is on the same bus, because you have the head unit here, where all the smart stuff is, with the internet connection and stuff, and you have powertrain ECUs, engine control, you have body ECUs, that's the blink and the wipers and all that. You have advanced control ECUs, steering control and all that. And if they're on the same CAN bus, you will have some trouble with, for example, if you get a bug here, so you can get in here, you can send powertrain messages, and everyone will think it's the powertrain that sends messages. And you can block the CAN bus, of course, so nobody will get anything. And this is better. So you have a gateway in the middle. So you have, for example, you divide it like this, so you can divide it anywhere. So you have a gateway, hopefully some logic in here, like I should not get RPM messages from the head unit, or brake messages from the head unit. And this way, you have some logic here. You can route the messages in some smart way. You can detect also the state, because this listens on everything. So if you're driving on the highway, there shouldn't be any messages from the park assist, for example. Yes, and also interesting about this layout is you have messages that's sort of authenticated, but it works like, for example, this one wants to do something interesting, like reprogram an ECU here. To do that, you usually have some kind of protocol where you're authenticated in some way, you have some secret. So you send a secret, everyone can see it, and then you're authenticated. The problem is this one doesn't know if come from the authenticated message could come here or here, and you can see it from there as well. So you can basically session hijack. So when this one authenticates and want to reprogram an issue here, you can, from the head unit, inject messages. Here you can block that by saying if this one authenticates, it should only come from here, otherwise I block it. And here you have even more modern car, where you have Ethernet. The transfer to Ethernet is driven by these sensors, not by security. So there's a lot of data from camera, radar, LiDAR, and all that. And they have to send to ECUs. That's a lot of data. So, but you usually also have a CAN bus and the bridge between there. And the reason for still having the CAN bus is cost, basically. These ECUs are cheap, the CAN bus is cheap, it's well proven. This is expensive. There aren't, maybe the ECUs you need here aren't supporting Ethernet, for example. So it's all about cost. The automotive industry is very, very cost sensitive. And to the interesting stuff. This is the paper where they did the JPAC. These guys did it. It's very interesting. I highly recommend you to read it. 91 pages of detailed descriptions of how they did everything. I will go through it, but I skip some parts. That's not that interesting. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because it's such a perfect hack. It's so many players that did something wrong because they're suppliers, just not the Jeep vendor. They're suppliers that supply things into the Jeep. There's, for example, Sprint that has the 3D connection. And all these players did something wrong that ended up being this hack. So the target, 2014 Jeep Cherokee. They didn't choose it because it's less secure than other vehicles. It's just that they could have everything they wanted with their budget. And because it has a very intriguing networking architecture. It looks like this. Oh, sorry. So you have the head unit here, radio, Bluetooth, everything that. You have CAN C-bus, where the engine and all that. And you have, this is the body ECUs and all that. And the head unit is connected to both these CAN buses. And so they basically did the flat design and not without the gateway. The car also had very nice to have features. Adaptive cruise control. If you can use that, you can control speed. Forward collision warning, you can control the brakes. Lane departure warning, you can control the steering. Park assist system, you can also control the steering. And it had a lot of remote attack surfaces. So you have the challenge response key fob. So, but you don't have much surface there, but it's something at least. It's the car sends a challenge to the key and the key responds. You have the tire pressing monitor that we showed before that can be hacked in the paper. You have Bluetooth, GPS, radio, satellite radio, Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is really nice. And the radio is hard to use because you just take the signals and convert to audio. But you have the text messages, that's parse data, maybe a bug there. Wi-Fi, of course. A Bluetooth stack, it's been shown many times that it can be hacked. This is the infotainment system. It's a Uconnect made by Harman Kardon. So FCA, they buy that infotainment system, put it in the car, maybe change some fonts and stuff. And it has Wi-Fi, navigation, apps, cellular communication. It's powered by the QNX operating system on our ARM CPU. It has a lot of interesting stuff. It's used by FCA and probably a lot of other brands. This one is a gold mine. They have Wi-Fi hotspot for the passengers to use. And so you buy it, they have it so you buy like a day or a month, and then your passengers can use it for that amount of time. It's VPA2 security, so that's quite good. Random password that's generated at boot. So you edit passphrase, you get a passphrase. And so what they did, they started disassembling the firmware to see how is this password randomized. And what they realized is the password is just a timestamp that's converted to ASCII. So how good is the system on keeping time? So what they did, this is the password they got. By disassembling, they saw this is a code, and they saw that it's just a timestamp. So they brute forced it, and they saw that it became this. So 1st of January 2013, 000032. And 32 happens to be the amount of seconds since they started the car. So what they realized is that the car gets its time from GPS or cellular, but it takes a lot of time. So you have a race condition there. So usually the password will be something near this, maybe 31 or 33, but you have very few passwords to try to get the password. When they were in Wi-Fi, of course, they did a port scan of the net, saw some different ports being open. The most interesting here is this one. The car can't have an IRC server. They realized that this is a debug session, and they tried to telnet it, and it responds with an error when they try to type. The dbus is a application communication process. So you have an application one that uses dbus, a socket, to communicate through the dbus with another application. So it's just a socket that listens for dbus connections. Dbus can require authentication. In this case, it didn't. You can be anonymous. And so then the next step you do is look what kind of services is presented through the dbus. They found a very interesting one, this one, nav trail service, and they found this method where you have a very nice command injection here. But they didn't need to use that because they also found an execute command through the dbus. So you can execute anything as root. So this is they're showing their picture on the head unit, here, their picture. And they can do anything here. Control the heating AC, get GPS, change the volume. They can kill the services that reacts to your knobs, the knob service. So they can increase maximum volume and kill the knob service. You can't decrease. They can do a lot of things there. But still, they have to be connected to Wi-Fi, so they have to be in the car or near the car. How do we go remote? So they looked at the network communication in the head unit, and they saw that they have, this one is the Wi-Fi, they have another one, PPP0, and that's the 3G modem. And so they realized this is the IP address they got, and they realized that it's always within this block. And that is the block that Sprint reserves for vehicles. So all vehicles will be within this block. And they also saw that this dbus service was, let's see, did I put, nope, I didn't, was connected to all interfaces, so both there and here, meaning you could connect to the dbus service over the 3G. But hopefully, Sprint does not allow connection between two devices within this block or out from the outside, just so you can surf from the Wi-Fi. But they did. So this is where they connect, here's a picture of it, where they connect to a Jeep in St. Louis from Pittsburgh. And they're in the Jeep, they can do whatever they like. When scanning this IP range, they found 2,695 vehicles that responded. The total recall resulting from this hack was 1.4 million vehicles. Yes. Yeah, think of like a worm or something using this to spread across vehicles. It's not that fun. But they still didn't have access to the CAN bus. They were still just in, here, in the telematics unit. They, of course, also want to access CAN bus. So they found that the telematics unit could not directly communicate with the CAN bus. They communicated with another microcontroller that could communicate with the CAN bus. So they dumped that firmware. They did a lot of reverse engineering. If you want to see all that, they're very detailed, everything. I recommend you to read the paper. And of course, they made that microcontroller to bridge, so they could send any CAN bus in the entire vehicle. So these are different messages they found that you can send. So over the internet, remote, from over the entire globe, you could, for example, kill the engine, just send that ID and then this data to a Jeep, and then that ID and that data, the engine will turn itself off. Disable the brakes, turn signals, steering. This is where they had a limitation that not over 5 kilometers per hour, and you have to have the gear in reverse. But otherwise, you can use steering. So this is what happened. They disclosed everything. Disclosed in October the dbus, and then in March that they could send any CAN bus message they wanted. In May, they disclosed that the bus was accessible over the cellular network. In July, they provided this paper. In July, Chrysler released a patch. July paper, and also later July, Sprint blocks the port 667 on those IP addresses. And of course, FCA responded with, well, the really bad attacks, controlling steering, all that, only possible during low speeds. They patched the remote attack, and they basically said, well, now everything is good. So I hope there's not more bugs. So in response, as I showed before, they wanted to show that, okay, we can do these attacks as well with at high speeds. So what they did was, you usually have an ECU telling, for example, another ECU, now it's okay, the vehicle state basically. Now it's okay to, for example, use the parking assist, and now it's not okay. There's a lot of these messages just pinging all the time. For example, the airbag message, it's a message that goes all the time that says, do not blow up the airbag, do not blow up the airbag, do not blow up the airbag, do not blow up the airbag. And if that stops coming, the airbag will blow up. So there's a lot of those messages. So what they did, they disabled the ECU that's sending these messages. And now they can use the park ECU whenever they want. And then FCA said, well, this new attack, we patched the remote, so this is not remote, it's not that bad. So how do you do to defend for these attacks? Well, what you should do, group ECUs on different CAN buses and have some kind of gateway and hopefully stateful firewall. So you know the state of the vehicle in the gateway. Ethernet, authentication, maybe TLS, but it's very expensive. And the big problem is cost, basically. If one manufacturer is starting to do all this, TLS, Ethernet, a very secure communication, it will cost more than other manufacturers, and people are very cost sensitive when they're buying cars. And they maybe don't know that this car is actually more secure, or they have done more to secure it. So it's hard to trigger each other to do more secure architectures. Yeah, and as we saw, there was a lot of, with the GPAC, there was a lot of players that they did what they're supposed to do, but did not think security. Why was D-bus accessible from all the network interfaces, or any outside network interface? Why was you able to access the car from outside on the internet? You only had to do a port scan to see that it was open. Yeah, so the automotive industry has a lot to do, but it's also a very young field. As I said, the first paper came out in 2010. If you compare to the computer security, they have done a lot longer. And yeah, and it's a complicated task to build a vehicle. You have a lot of subcontractors, you have a lot of players that supply you with different stuff, and you have to make sure everything is secured. And of course the CAN bus. The CAN bus is old. It's very well proven. The ECUs are cheap, the bus is cheap, but you have no authentication. You don't know who sent which message. Yeah, and that's a big problem in cost of new ECUs and network infrastructure. And public awareness. Who actually thinks about how secure is this car when they buy a car? That's not a lot of people. But it's getting better, I hope. And I think that's it.